So, we've been playing Take Time, The Crew, and The Mind back to back for weeks now. And somehow, these three tiny cooperative card games managed to melt our brains in totally different ways.
Yeah, and what surprised us is how often we finished a night saying, okay, if someone only buys one of these, which one actually deserves that slot? This is very much a buy this, not that episode, but because we've played all three side by side, we definitely don't agree on which one should win in every category.
Also, fair warning, there may be flashbacks to a certain session where the mind absolutely wrecked us and then the crew finished the job. So before we get into the details, here's the quick rundown. Take Time is the newer cooperative puzzle from La Belle Dead, where 2 to 4 players place numbered day and night cards around these clock tiles, trying to satisfy segment rules like, this one has to stay low total, or exactly 2 cards here. The Crew, the Quest for Planet 9, is a 2 to 5 player cooperative trick-taking campaign where you're in space trying to complete missions by making specific players win specific cards in tricks. And The Mind is the stripped-down 2 to 4 player game where you just have cards 1 to 100, and as a team, you try to play them in ascending order without talking or showing your hands.
Right, and the way we approached this comparison was literally playing them back to back over multiple nights. We'd do a chapter of Take Time, then a handful of missions of The Crew, and close with a couple of runs of The Mind, or mix that order depending on how fried our brains already were. In our games, Take Time usually sat in that 30-40 minute window for a set of clocks. The Crew sessions tended to drift toward an hour because just one more mission is real, and The Mind often gave us several full runs in that same hour. So even though they're all small cooperative card games, they slot into an evening very differently.
And they also clicked at different speeds. In our first Take Time session, you picked up the idea of planning around the clock segments immediately, but we kept forgetting 1 or 2 icons in the early games and only spotted the mistake when we were checking the puzzle at the end. The Crew, for us, was super intuitive because we both know trick-taking already. But when we played it with newer gamers, the first few missions were pure training wheels. The Mind, though, hit that weird place where everyone understood the rules in under a minute, but needed a few games before they stopped feeling completely random.
Which is exactly why a straight, they're all co-op card games, just grab one, doesn't really work. After playing all three side by side, it became really obvious that the kind of tension, the kind of thinking, and even the kind of frustration they generate are pretty different. So let's talk about how they actually play, because that's where those differences really showed up for us.
Mechanically, Take Time is all about that 2-phase flow. Talk, then silence. In our sessions, each puzzle started with us staring at the clock tile together, pointing at segments, counting out rough totals, and saying things like, okay, this one has to stay low, that one can push near 24, this segment only wants day cards. Nobody has looked at their cards yet, so all the planning is abstract. Then, as soon as one of us draws our 4-card hand, the table goes quiet and we move into the placement phase, taking turns putting 1 card face down in front of any segment. The only communication left is that little, I'm not sure hand raise, which is more of a warning than a real signal.
And the punchline is always the reveal. You flip everything, add up the segments, check the ascending order, make sure no segment breaks the 24 cap unless the infinity icon is there, and see if every special condition is satisfied. In our games, when we got through a tricky clock with multiple constraints on the first try, it felt like we collectively solved the satisfying logic puzzle. But when we failed because one segment went a single point over or someone misunderstood an icon, it felt less like a dramatic story and more like a math test we just barely failed.
The Crew, on the other hand, lives or dies on those tiny trick-by-trick decisions. On your turn, you're either leading a trick with any card you like, or following suit if you can, with the rocket suit acting as trump. The twist, as we kept explaining to people at the table, is that the whole group has to make sure that specific players win specific cards, the task cards, across the round. In our missions, that meant every single trick carried weight. Playing a harmless-looking 2 could accidentally steal a card someone else was supposed to win, or tossing a rocket at the wrong time could ruin 2 tasks at once.
The one-use communication token in The Crew is where it really differentiated itself from the other 2 for us. Once around, you lay one of your cards in front of you and mark it as your highest, lowest, or only card in that suit. During our sessions, that tiny bit of information unlocked a whole layer of inference. If you showed your lowest yellow card as a 6, I knew you didn't have the 1 to 5 in that suit, which meant someone else did, which affected when I dared to lead yellow. That's a very different kind of tension from Take Time's reveal or the mind's silent staring.
Then the mind is almost comically simple on paper. We shuffle a deck numbered 1 to 100, deal everyone a hand based on the level, 1 card each in level 1, 2 cards in level 2, and so on, and just try to play the cards in ascending order without saying anything or showing our hands. In our sessions, the mechanism boiled down to waiting and reading each other. If I had a 12 and a 54, and you suddenly played an 11 after a long pause, I knew to slam my 12 right after. But when I had a 48 and a 51, and nobody played anything for what felt like forever, the stress was ridiculous.
And the throwing stars in the mind gave us some of the funniest table moments. When we agreed to use one, everyone discards their lowest card face up, and that often turned a hopeless feeling level into something we could actually navigate. There were times where we'd burn a star and suddenly see 3 single-digit cards hit the table and just laugh because we'd all been too scared to go first, compared to Take Time and the Crew, where most decisions are tied directly to clear rules. The mind's key decisions are about how brave you feel and how well you think you understand the group's timing.
When conditions follow that pattern, Take Time says you must satisfy everything on this clock or you fail. Full stop. There's no partial credit. One segment breaks the rules and you redo the entire puzzle. The Crew breaks success into missions. If a task goes to the wrong person, you reset the mission, but you're always working toward that big 50-mission arc. And even a failure often felt like progress because we'd learned something. The mind just asks, can you finish all the levels before you run out of lives? And the journey is mostly about how in sync you can stay over time.
That difference in structure made the complexity feel very different too. Take Time has a bit more icon learning and counting up front, especially in later chapters, but once you've internalized the symbols, it's pretty straightforward. It's all permutations of the same core idea. The Crew keeps the rules light, but twists the missions in ways that made us rethink our habits every few games. And the mind basically never adds complexity. It just increases the hand sizes and expects your group to manage the escalating tension.
When we looked at depth versus complexity, the Crew clearly gave us the deepest decision space without adding much overhead. In our later missions, we were tracking suits that had already appeared, paying attention to who had already communicated and with what card, and planning ways to feed someone a trick they needed without accidentally taking it ourselves. Those are real multi-turn plans. Take Time's depth was more about that shared pre-planning, deciding which segments we wanted to sacrifice with low or high totals, trying to keep enough flexibility so people with awkward hands still had somewhere to go. But during the silent phase, a lot of it came down to trusting that the math we did earlier would hold up.
The mind in comparison didn't feel deep in a traditional strategic sense. From our experience, once we found a rough timing rhythm that worked for our group, improvement came more from feeling each other out than from making sharper tactical calls. There's no long-term plan. You're not saying 3 turns from now I want to create this situation. You're just living in the moment and hoping your read on the table is right. That can be powerful, but if someone is looking for clever lines of play, the mind isn't going to scratch that itch the way the Crew does.
Player count and interaction really changed the flavor of each one. Take Time at 2 players turned into this super tight brain puzzle where we both felt very responsible for every failure. At 3 players, which became our default, we got the best mix of planning and unpredictability, and the discussion phase still gave everyone a voice. At 4, the individual impact shrinks a bit because each person plays fewer cards per puzzle, so it's more about the macro plan than crafty personal plays.
With the Crew, we both agreed that 3 and 4 players were the sweet spot. At 3, there's still a lot of information to track, but you can form a pretty coherent mental picture of what everyone might be holding. At 4, things get more chaotic in a good way, because a single trick can involve multiple tasks, and the stakes feel higher. 5 players was fun, but noticeably slower for us, and we found it harder to maintain that razor-sharp focus on every task. 2-player with the Jarvis dummy hand technically works, but in our games it always felt like one person was doing extra bookkeeping.
The mind at different counts
felt like 3 versions of the same experiment. 2 players was almost like a cooperative puzzle. We quickly learned each other's timing habits, and winning felt methodical. 3 players added just enough uncertainty that victories felt more earned without totally blowing up our rhythm. 4 players pushed it into party story territory. The best sessions at 4 gave us those ridiculous moments where 4 cards hit the table perfectly in order, and everyone just started laughing in disbelief.
In terms of interaction, the crew easily felt the most alive. Even with no talking about your hand, every card you play is reacting to someone else and shaping their options. It's indirect, but it's constant. Take Time's interaction is front-loaded in that planning phase. Once the silence begins, you're mostly interacting with the shared puzzle and your memory of the plan rather than with people's live decisions. The mind is the purest social interaction in a weird way. It's eye contact, hesitation, body language, but it's very group dependent, whether that feels engaging or just awkward.
For pacing, we noticed that the crew gave us the most consistent tempo. Tricks up quick, missions reset fast, and even when we failed a few times in a row, we never felt bogged down. Take Time's pacing swung more. Some clocks flew by when the plan and the card draws lined up. Others dragged when we hit the same tricky constraint 3 times in a row. The mind was either brisk and electric or a little sloggy on higher levels when everyone was too scared to commit.
The replayability and theme kind of tie together for these. The crew's 50 missions, plus the way the task distribution and card deals change each time, gave us the longest tail. We could replay mission numbers with different groups and still feel like we were solving a new problem. Take Time's 40 clocks gave us a really satisfying arc the first time through, but after that, even if we didn't remember exact solutions, we definitely remembered general approaches, so the freshness started to fade. The mind is infinitely replayable in theory, but in practice, our enjoyment curve depended a lot on how much we still found that mind meld feeling novel.
Theme-wise, we both noticed that none of the 3 leans hard on story, but they each use themes slightly differently. Take Time's dreamy clock art made the table look nice and give a gentle vibe, but we never really thought about time as a concept while playing. It stayed an abstract numbers puzzle. The crew's space mission framing actually did help us feel like we were on a journey, especially reading the little mission blurbs between scenarios, even if the tricks themselves were just tricks. The mind pretty much drops theme entirely and just embraces the idea that the story is you trying to sync up with the people at the table.
On components and table presence, we both appreciated how much these small boxes managed to do. Take Time's production felt the most deluxe to us, with thick clock tiles and pleasant art that gave the game a cozy presence. On the table, that central clock with cards orbiting it really stands out and makes it easy for everyone to see what's happening. The crew's cards are functional and sturdy. Newer printings especially felt like they'd survive a lot of shuffling, and the iconography made it easy to parse suits and tasks at a glance.
The mind is the most bare bones visually, but that simplicity is kind of its charm. It uses its minimal design to keep focus on the numbers and the tension rather than on fancy art. All 3 are very portable. We'd toss them in bags and pockets without a second thought, but the mind is the easiest to slip into any situation. Then the crew, then Take Time, just because of the extra tiles. None of them overstayed their welcome on the table footprint-wise. They're all very cafe and travel-friendly.
Value-wise, from our plays, the crew clearly offered the most for repeated game nights. Between the mission variety and how different groups approached the same problems, we just kept pulling it out. Take Time felt like a very solid, self-contained campaign we were happy to work through once, maybe twice after a long break. The mind lived or died on whether we were in the mood for that specific tense, silent energy. Some nights we'd chain 3 or 4 plays, other nights we'd do 1 run and feel done.
So, who should actually be buying which of these? From our experience, Take Time is best for people who love cooperative puzzles and want a finite series of challenges they can chew through with a regular partner or small group. It's especially good if you enjoy that escape room in a box style design where solving is the point and you don't mind that the mystery fades once you've seen everything. The crew is ideal if you like structured campaigns, clever card play, and that feeling that your group is tangibly getting better over time.
The mind is for people who lean into vibe over structure. If your group loves tense, almost meditative experiences and is okay with outcomes that feel a bit swingy, it can create some of the most memorable 10-minute stretches of any game on this list. But if your players want clear, crunchy decisions and obvious levers to pull, they're going to gravitate hard toward the crew and possibly toward Take Time, and they'll probably bounce off the mind after the novelty wears off.
When it comes to buy this, not that,
From our nights of playing all three, we've landed on a pretty clear hierarchy. If you're only going to buy one small cooperative card game and you want it to last, buy the Crew. It balances accessibility, strategic depth, and replayability in a way the others just don't match. It handled different player counts well, it handled losses gracefully, and it gave us the most satisfying we earned that win feeling.
Buy Take Time if you already have something like the Crew or the Mind and you specifically want a campaign-style puzzle experience. It doesn't try to be endlessly replayable. It tries to be a well-crafted sequence of problems, and in that lane, it succeeds. Just don't expect it to be the game you're still playing every week a year from now. Buy the Mind if you want an intense, pocket-sized experience you can break out anywhere, and you're okay with a game that's more about shared tension than about clever card manipulation.
On the not that side, we'd say skip Take Time as your only co-op if long-term variety is your top priority. Skip the Crew if you absolutely hate trick-taking or know that 2 players is your main count, and you don't want to juggle a dummy hand. And skip the Mind if your group gets irritated by games where you can't easily see what you did wrong beyond the "we weren't on the same wavelength today." None of these are bad games, but they are pretty specific about the kind of fun they offer.
Personally, if someone took away 2 of them and said I could only keep one, I'd keep the Crew too. It just fits more situations, and every time we bring it back, we end up saying, oh yeah, this really is that good. I'd miss the Mind for those crazy perfect rounds, and I'd miss Take Time for those evenings where we just want to co-solve pretty puzzles. But the Crew is the one that feels like it earns permanent shelf space.
I'm with you on that. The Mind is going to keep living in my bag as a just-in-case game, and Take Time is something I'm glad we played through and would happily revisit with the right person. But if a new gamer asked, hey, I want one small cooperative card game that will actually see regular play, the Crew is the one I'd recommend without hesitation.
So that's where we landed after playing Take Time, the Crew, and the Mind side by side for weeks. Tiny boxes, big differences, and hopefully this helps you figure out which one actually belongs on your shelf. Thanks for listening. Go sync your brains or your tricks, and we'll catch you in the next episode.